from my car. With all this ice and snow we've had, I've not felt comfortable. I can't, still a little uncomfortable walking with the icy
Right.
areas.
Yeah. In no sense in risking your health,
My car. Yeah, with all this.
There will be another winter next year.
Yeah. I'm really glad they removed the geofencing, though. It was really annoying to get FAA approval and then DJI saying, "Oh, sorry, you can't fly."
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more. I mean, I do have somewhat mixed feelings on it because hopefully we won't get an influx of newbies that just don't want to bother paying attention to the rules and start screwing it up for us. Because then what'll happen is the FAA will crack down and will get real restricted, and you don't want that.
Yeah. Well, one of the difficulties I think is getting the information out. When I first got my drone and I first started flying, I had no idea of what a Lance approval was or how to get it. And it took me a while, a couple of people pointing me in the right direction. And I don't know what the answer is, but when you buy a drone, there should be some source of that information.
Yeah, I agree with that. And that's actually one of the reasons I put the program together that I did that we're going to be putting out next month during this time. Just because if somebody is thinking about getting into this, it's meant to introduce them to the world of drones. What's the process when you do buy one and all that. So that's exactly why I put this together.
Are you presenting it here?
Yeah, it should be right, Jeff. That's
Yep, next month.
Yeah.
Next month. If anybody wants to join the panel, please raise your Zoom hand, and Marty or I will bring you on in.
A couple of them here. Some new names. What's in?
Yeah, we're getting a good turnout. People slowly.
Yeah, you know how it is, Jeff. Everybody waits the last minute.
Yeah.
Yeah,
all right. Well, we're going to get started here, everyone. Again, if anybody wants to join the panel, please raise your Zoom hand. And we're going to get started. We've got a full morning ahead. We will have Kevin Adams talk about photographing waterfalls for day and night, somebody that I've followed for quite a few years. But I've got a few announcements first. Number one announcement is next Saturday. WACO has their main seminar with Daryl Gouline. He will be talking about landscape photography and travel photography. It's going to be a really nice seminar. General admission is $36.50. You can sign up at on the WACO website. And so please, if you haven't signed up, please sign up. It's going to be a great morning seminar. It will go from 9 o'clock in the morning till about 12:30. So we still have plenty of room, and that seminar helps keep this digital forum going all year long. So it's one of our major funding areas for WACO. For those of you in WACO camera clubs, the WACO competition is now open and accepting entries. One note of change is we have moved the competition date up a month to April 5th instead of the first weekend in May. So you will have to get your images in before March, I believe it's 23rd. So get your images uploaded, and don't forget that it's going to be a month earlier because I had too many things going on that first weekend in May. Actually, if anybody's interested, the first weekend in May in Menominee Falls, we are having a Revolutionary War reenactment that whole weekend. A great spot to get some super pictures. So check with me if you're interested in that. We have a bunch of reenactments at Old Falls Village Park in Menominee Falls all summer long, and I'm heavily involved in that one, so it will be a great time if you want to get some interesting people pictures. So let's get started here. Kevin Adams is a naturalist, writer, teacher, and photographer with a lifelong passion for nature. He is an author and photographer of 10 books and a skilled instructor who leads photo tours and workshops. Known as the MacGyver of photography, he designs and sells unique products for night photographers. Kevin lives in Waynesville, North Carolina, with his wife Patricia and a lovely household of rescued cats, plus a few uninvited but persistent wildlife visitors. And you may end up hearing my cat as he's now sleeping on all my cables in the corner here. But he will be talking again about photographing waterfalls day and night. I have been following him for quite a few years. He may have noticed a shadow behind him all the time, who knows, but he has some really great photography. I've been looking forward to having him on, and we finally were able to get this worked out. So let me just change the spotlight, and where'd it go here? Replace spotlight. There we go. There's Kevin. Thanks, Kevin. Welcome.
You, Jeffrey. Thank you very much, and thank you everyone for being here. I'm really excited about this. So I guess I need to share my screen right off. Is that right?
Sure.
Okay, we'll get this going. And now, well, there we go. Let me switch this over. Okay,
Yep.
so I'm assuming
Good.
you see the title slide now that has the night and day waterfall on it.
Yep, we do.
All right, well, we are good to go. Let's talk about waterfalls. So I know you guys got some cool waterfalls up there. So hopefully you can pick out some information here that you can apply to some of those. Sometimes people think about, well, how can you give a whole program on photographing waterfalls? And my problem is deciding what to keep out of a program on photographing waterfalls. And I think you'll see what I'm talking about. You'll understand before I get done with this program. It's just so exciting, and there's so many different ways and approaches that you can whoa, that was not supposed to be the next slide. What is going on, my friends? Okay, this is embarrassing. I don't know. Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, so all right, we're going to talk first about it's just not good when you start out like that, but I promise that I'll get better as I go along. Okay. So I'm going to start out by telling you a little story here. I was in the Smokies a few years back, and I was camping, and I woke up the next morning, and I was just laying in my sleeping bag trying to decide what I was going to do for that day. And it just hit me. I thought, well, I haven't been to Grotto Falls in a while. I think I'm going to hike to that waterfall. So I started hiking, and about halfway there, it started sprinkling rain. And I thought, well, that's okay. I can handle that. Besides, I like photographing waterfalls in the rain anyway. So I finished up the hike. I got there, set up my camera, and I am just ready. I mean, I've got the shutter release in my hand, and I'm ready to take the picture. And I heard a sound, and I looked over to the left, and I'll be darned, here comes this llama train walking along the trail. Oh, I couldn't believe it. Well, and the trail goes behind the falls, and I knew the llamas would be going behind there, but they're moving at a pretty fast clip. So I knew there's no way I was going to get a shot. So I was just waiting for them to get out of the way because I had like a 4-second shutter speed. It was pretty dark that morning, real early, rainy, and they'd be all blurry if I tried to photograph them. But I'll be darned. They got behind that waterfall and stopped. I couldn't believe it. And so I pressed the shutter and I got the shot. And just about as soon as I got the shot, they took off. I mean, can you believe that? If you do, I'm going to hang around, and after the program, I want to talk to you. I got a bunch of stuff I'd like to sell you. All right, let's break this down, okay? First of all, I wake up in the morning on a photo trip and I don't know where I'm going or what I'm going to do. Are you kidding me? That's not how this works. You plan everything out ahead of time. At the latest, you should know when you go to bed at night where you're going when you get up. Learn your subjects and plan and decide what you're going to do. Next, it started raining on the way and surprised me. No, it didn't surprise me at all. The reason that I chose that hike was because I knew it was going to be the ideal conditions for me to photograph that morning, which is, for me, is in the rain, as you shall see. And the biggie, I was surprised by the llama train. No, I was not surprised. That is exactly why I was there on that day, because I knew the llama train was going to be going. The llamas supply LeConte Lodge, which is a walk-in lodge, a hike-in lodge on top of Mount LeConte. And so I did my research. They go Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, very early in the morning. I called the lodge. Do you think it'd be okay if I got up with the guide and photographed? Sure, no problem. So I got there. I was there like an hour before he showed up, way in the dark. And we talked about it. And so made the arrangements that when he got to a certain spot, I was going to yell, stop. And then when I got the shot, I was going to yell, thank you. And that was it. And that's the way it works. I mean, you're going to get, if you're out there a lot, sure, you're going to get some good shots just by serendipity. But if you count on that, if you depend on that, you're going to be disappointed. You need to plan your shots. And so let's do some planning for waterfalls and how we might photograph them. So very often for waterfalls, for me, it's getting out in the rain, because that is, for a lot of waterfalls, the best time to shoot them, for sure. Rain has the ability to, it softens the shadows, the water droplets, the moisture droplets. It's like a gazillion reflectors and diffusers and stuff. So you don't get the harsh contrast. So especially if you're photographing in the forest, waterfalls in the forest like we have here in Western North Carolina. I'm not as sure as much about where you're from, but out west or more out in the open. I know that, but we get a lot of contrast in the forest, and you can't photograph the waterfalls when you're in the forest on a sunny day. But if it's raining, wow, it's good. And rain's even better than just a regular overcast day, because you can still get some contrast on an overcast day in the forest. So, and the other thing about rain is it wets down all the rocks and the foliage, and so it saturates that foliage and it prevents the rocks from hot spotting. Those dry rocks, sometimes they can just become very big distractions. They get all white, they take your eye away from your subject, and that's not what you want. And if you have fog too, then it's really cool. What the fog is doing in this scene is it's preventing the overcast sky from being distracting. If you see it up here, can you see my mouse at the top of the waterfall?
Yep.
So this V shape right here is sky. And if I photograph this on just an overcast day, this shot's not going to work nearly as well, because that white overcast sky is going to blend with the white waterfall. It's going to draw your eye to the sky, and it's just not going to work as well. But see what that fog is doing to it? Making the shot work very well for that. I wouldn't even shoot this if those rocks were dry, because these particular rocks anyway would be so light colored, it would just be very distracting. But with the rain wetting everything down, we get super saturation on that. You don't need to use the saturation slider in Photoshop. You get it automatically. The same thing here. Nice rainy day. Everything is just soft and smooth and saturated. God, I love photographing in that. Now, it does present some issues. It's raining, so you have to deal with that. And this is how I deal with that. I hope you can hear this okay.
So I talk all the time about shooting
Can you hear that good?
Yep, yep.
Okay. All right, we'll carry on.
in the rain, and I literally mean shooting in the rain. Unless it's just a huge downpour, I'm out in it. This is what I use to stay dry, or more importantly, to keep my camera dry. I'm not as concerned about myself. This is a simple setup. I just got a clamp at the man store. You know what the man store is, Lowe's or Home Depot, right? So just got a simple little hand clamp there. I've got a small ball head attached to it so that I can turn the umbrella in any direction I want. And to the ball head, I have a dowel rod where I cut a short section to make a handle, and I bored a hole in the end of it so that it would accept the umbrella. Now that's very important. I don't want that permanently attached, because once I'm ready to start shooting, I want to move the umbrella out of it and hand hold it so that the vibrations from the rain don't shake the camera. It works very good.
It does indeed. In fact, it works so good. I had so many people asking about it and stuff. And so I improved the design a bit, and I actually manufacture that now. It's called the Rain Brake, and I sell it on my website. Now, I'm not trying to sell you one. In fact, for you do-it-yourselfers, if you want to make one, get up with me, send me an email, or give me a call, and I'll talk you through how you can make one for yourself to work. But let me tell you something. If you buy one from me, you ain't going to get that leopard skin umbrella. I'm the only one that gets that, okay? Yours is going to be black. Sorry. All right, so let's talk about different times to shoot. You hear all the time, right, about you want to photograph early in the morning, you know, when that sun's low on the horizon, and get those golden colors, the sunrise and sunset situation. And that's true. The problem with waterfalls, at least waterfalls in my neck of the woods, is it doesn't work. The waterfalls most of them are tucked in the forest. We have I can count on one hand the number of waterfalls that work okay for photographing right at sunrise and sunset. A lot of our waterfalls don't even get sunlight until a couple of hours or even more after sunrise. And a few hours before sunset, they're already in the shade. They're all tucked in the forest. Now, if you're out west, it's a different situation. Or if you're not in the mountains, the high mountains with a lot of trees, then it might be. But for us, we can't do that. So I treasure the ones that we can. This is the best one in North Carolina for photographing at sunrise. This is Bridalveil Falls in DuPont State Recreational Forest. Unfortunately, now you can no longer hike at night in the forest. They don't give permits for that anymore, so you can't legally actually get this shot now. But I am right there, right when the sun's coming up. And actually, I spent the night at the waterfall, so I did a lot of night photography. And then this is the twilight shot that I made before I shot the one that I just showed you there. Now, I can't show. I'm not able to show you any more sunrise or sunset shots because, like I say, there just aren't any in North Carolina that work well for that. But here's what I can show you: you can do this anywhere. And you might not think about this as much, but this is really cool. While the sun may not hit the waterfall, and you may not see the sun itself, it's blocked by trees and stuff. That early morning sun right after sunrise or just before sunset very often will illuminate the trees or the mountainsides above the waterfall. So you can get that juxtaposition with the cool bluish waterfall and the warmer trees at top. I love doing this. And this would have been a disaster back in the film days, but our digital cameras are so good. It can handle that contrast. And I rarely have, and I do bracket the exposures quite a bit just in case. but I rarely have to blend exposures or do any HDR. I can usually get it in just one exposure just by doing a shadow highlight adjustment, as I did with this shot. I really enjoy doing that. And here's another one. This one, I will admit the contrast was too great and I had to do some blending. But so the sun has just come up and it's hitting the trees, as you can see at the top of the falls. But look down there at the bottom. It's going to be at least 2 hours before the sun's going to hit the bottom there. But we can get this shot now. Now we got to move quick though. You have to hit it just right and watch that, because if the sun gets too high so that it becomes a white ball instead of a yellow ball, then you have way too much contrast even when you try to do blending and stuff. So watch that. Be there early, real early, to get your shots for that. So here's another example of the same thing. The sun has just risen. It's hitting those trees at the top, but not the bottom. So that juxtaposition, I really like that. Of course, we can't always be at the waterfalls when we want to be. When you're taking a trip, you go out on a photo trip or vacation, you have to take what you can get. You still need to plan ahead as best you can. Maybe you could at least plan the night before ahead of time. So if it's sunny and you got no other choice here, with that, you can't wait. This is your trip. You can't come back. Try to find a subject, whether it's a waterfall or anything else, that's out in the open, that's receiving even illumination. Because when you get tucked in that forest, that's when you get all the contrast, and that's when it doesn't work. But if you can get even illumination, even when it's sunlight, direct sunlight, you can make it work. This is an example, exhibit A here. It's all out in the open. Well, sort of out in the open. There's still contrast. If you look closely, you can see we got black areas, but there's such a minor part of the overall scene. Not only do they not hurt, they actually help it there. But if I was to walk in the forest in there, I wouldn't even get my camera out because the contrast would be too great. You probably want to bracket your exposures a bit, just to make sure, because the slightest change in exposure with shots like this can make a big difference. And you want to make sure that you come back with everything, all the material you need to make it work. I was at this waterfall a good hour and a half before I made this shot, because when I first got there, the sun was cutting across the waterfall like this. Now that ain't going to work. That's just not going to work at all. So I waited till it got down and I only had this shadow. Now you can see there's extreme contrast here. We have almost no detail at all. In fact, you may not be able to see any detail in this program in this bottom part here, but that's okay. Is quite all right. In fact, I kind of like that down there. You just don't want it to cut off half of your waterfall there. So I just waited. I just waited for the sun to get high enough that it was illuminating enough of the scene that would make it work. And I got lucky with the little spray bow there as just a little added bonus. And when I finished photographing this, I scrambled up and I got on this ledge right here so I could photograph this drop of the waterfall. Now, at that time, as you can imagine, this is going to be fully illuminated. There's not going to be any shadows whatsoever around it. So I'm going to be in total sunlight for that, but that's okay because it's even. The entire scene here is covered. Now, here's a situation where I like to bracket exposures, not because I'm not certain of what it is, or not because I just want to make sure I have all of the material I need when I get back to the computer, but for the look that I'm after. So very often what I'll do in a case like this with backlit situations and side lit situations, and especially with waterfalls that have white water, is I'll drop that exposure down quite a bit from what the camera recommends it to be. Now, did you notice how I worded that? I didn't say that I underexposed the scene. See, I have a little bit of a thing with that when people say I purposely overexposed or underexposed. Well, no, you didn't. You got the exposure you wanted. If you overexposed, then the photo's too bright. And if you underexpose, it's too dark. So don't say it like that. Say, I exposed it to get the look that I wanted. So what I did, I like this shot here, but I also took another shot where I dropped the exposure down a couple of stops from what the camera recommended so that I would get this. I call this proper exposure. I don't call it underexposure. This is what I wanted. So doggone it, I got the right exposure for it. But you can see the difference in it, okay? I like them both, like I said. You might just get this and walk away and see what you'd miss. So do some bracketing there, play around with it. And same thing with shutter speeds that we'll be talking about coming up. And then you get a whole new look in your shots. Very effective, this technique is with shooting sun stars. The technique of dropping that exposure down. When you have the sun in a crisp blue sky, not one with haze, there can't be any clouds, thin clouds blocking the sun. It won't work. It's got to be perfectly clear, like after a front comes through and it clears out the air. Then you can get cool sun stars like this, and it's very easy. All you need to do is just stop the lens down to say f16 or 22, get that really small hole. And then what happens, you have that really tiny hole for the light to go through. And that bright light, it sort of bends around those aperture blades. And that's what creates the sun star. And if you want to know how many aperture blades somebody has, then you just count these rays, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then that'll tell you. But what you want to do for this is you want to lower the exposure from what you normally shoot, and certainly from what the camera might recommend. 2 stops is good. It usually works pretty good. And hand hold it. Don't put it on a tripod because you're going to spend too much time looking at it and it could hurt your eyes. And if you do, if you look through the viewfinder to compose like I do, don't look directly at the sun to it. Look away from it as you compose. And then you get this. It's pretty cool, huh? Use a wide angle lens. Don't try to shoot a sun star with a 500 millimeter lens, okay? Unless you got some solar filters over it, because you don't want to hurt your eyes for that. So same thing here. This is a messed up lens here. I don't know how many aperture blades it has. It's hard to tell with this, isn't it? But so it just adds a little bit. See, I might not even take, well, I guess I would take this shot like this if the sun wasn't there. But I really like it a lot better with the sun in there, don't you think? I think it works a lot better for that. So think about that. So there's just some things that you can do when you've got those sunny days. And the lighting is just not perfect for other things. Foregrounds, gosh, I'm a foreground fanatic. I look for foregrounds first. I'm serious. I'll be hiking up to a waterfall and I'm looking down at my feet before I ever even look at the waterfall and saying, is there something good that I can, a rock, a log, a whirlpool in the pool below or something like that, a pothole that I can use as a foreground. There's a couple of techniques that you can do here. One is what I did here is where you take a wide angle lens. You get right up on that foreground, whatever it is. You usually have to tilt the lens down so that you're not including too much sky or stuff above the falls. You want to get a good composition. And you get right on the foreground. I'm inches away here. When you do that, it makes that foreground big, look big. and it'll make the waterfall look smaller. So keep that in mind. If the idea is to keep that waterfall looking as large as it can in the frame, don't use that technique. You want to use a 50 millimeter lens. You want to shoot from eye level and shoot straight onto it if you want to do that. You can still include a foreground, but the foreground is going to be a minor part, and people might not even realize that you tried to put a foreground in there if you do that. So here we have that technique with my favorite kind of foreground, which is a pothole. If those little potholes, if you come up to them, if they don't have water in them, just put some in them. Take your water bottle and however long it takes and fill it up and put some in there, and it'll look a lot better, I think, with that in there. Love those potholes. And you can see that technique is just getting right up on it. I'm probably about, I think I was 9 to 12 inches away, but I'm using a wide angle lens. Okay, a really wide angle lens, like 17 millimeter wide or so. And I don't do focus stacking. I don't need to. There's plenty of depth of field with that wide angle lens when you're not covering any more distance than this. I mean, it's not like I'm shooting the Milky Way in the background with it. So a single exposure, or you don't have to do the focus stacking with it to do it. So look for those. That's going to add some emphasis, some extra. Those leaves were already there, by the way. I put leaves in. I don't mind it, but I didn't have to with this one. They were already there. So here, this one's interesting, all right, because I noticed that whirlpool, but there weren't leaves in it when I first started. But I still wanted to shoot it, even without the leaves. And so I started setting up. Well, there's a lot of rhododendron all behind me, and they had these yellow leaves on them. Just getting ready to fall. And in the process of me setting all of this up, I kept bumping up against it with my tripod and my arms and all that sort of stuff. Every time I'd hit one of those rhododendron, more leaves would fall into that whirlpool. And it was just really cool that that happened. And then I was able to get the shot that I wanted. Okay, how many of you believe that one? Of course not. I put those leaves there. I went around, I got the composition, what I wanted, and then I went around on a leaf collecting journey, and I picked up a whole bunch of leaves and I threw them in there. Now, what I did have to do with this, even though I've got good lighting here, but remember what I said, you can still have contrast, too much contrast to work. That whirlpool's in shade. And since we have that dark shady area and the white water, and the trees in the background, even though they're not getting full bright sunset, they're getting a lot of light. It's just too much contrast to make it work. And because I wanted a long shutter speed, so I get movement in the whirlpool. So that's big there. So luckily with this shot, I had an excellent transition so that I could just shoot 2 exposures. You see, we got this transition right here between the dark area, the foreground, and the lighter area in the background. So I just shot 2 exposures, one for the foreground that's probably 30 seconds long, and then one for the background. And then I stacked. This is not an HDR, okay? You don't have to do that. This is so simple. It's simple to say in here, but you have
Roll.
time on
Hopefully he keeps coming back. He warned us that this might happen, so.
Please stand by. Due to technical difficulties beyond our control.
Everybody has fun with internet.
Yeah. It's been quite interesting so far, Jeff. I'm just looking at the chat, and Dan had he mentioned 4-second shutter. Is that what you use for all your waterfall shots? I guess we'll have to follow up with them at the end when we get them back.
Yeah, I've got a note for that. And just to let everybody know, we're gonna do question and answer at the end. That's what he would like to do. So we're holding your questions, so I've got that one down and we will definitely answer. But we'll see if he comes back right away. He does run into some internet problems where he's at, so as you get farther south and into areas where you don't have great internet, you run into problems like this. But he's in a neat area, the Smoky Mountains, Grotto Falls, that first shot that he had done. I hiked up to that waterfall a couple times, once with a 4x5 camera and all the gear needed to do it in the film days. And that's quite a hike. It's a good 1.5 mile walk uphill, and not the easiest of trails, but it's a gorgeous waterfall. I've never seen it quite that full. I've always gotten there early or late spring, and it's Hi, Kevin. Oh, okay. Sure. Okay, no problem. Sure. Yeah, we'll get into some other stuff for the time being. We'll wait for you to try to get back in, and if you can't make it, we'll figure another time to get you back. Yep. Nope. We're enjoying it so far quite a bit, so we sure hope you can come back today. Yeah. Yeah. So no problem. Soon as you can get back in, come on back. All righty. No problem. Bye.
He must be using Starlink. Huh?
It could be. Yeah,
Everything's
it
a mess over there.
he's-
So
it's completely out by him right now for some reason, and he said it usually comes back right away. So we'll just sort of tap dance for a little bit and hope that he gets it to come back, and
Where in
Then
North
he'll
Carolina
conti-
is he?
what was that, Drama?
Where in North Carolina is he?
He's in Waynesville. I'm not quite sure exactly where that is, but
Kind of in the, well, you could say kind of in the middle of the state, but it's, yeah, he's in the middle of nowhere.
yeah.
in the hills,
So yeah, it could very well be Starlink. And sometimes they get some gaps or problems with it. But
Yeah,
he's
that-
going
I
to
just-
try to get.
I just said that
come-
as a sarcastic remark. So
Yeah, but knowing that he is in the middle of nowhere. There he is. He's back.
I'm back. Sorry about that, guys. All right. Let me
No
reshare
problem.
here. As I was telling Jeffrey a few minutes ago, I've been lucky. This is the first time that has happened. But I knew it was going to at some point in time. So
Yeah.
get to be the lucky ones. Okay, so as I was saying, sometimes this is easy to say and hear, but not to do until you've done it one time. You take one shot for the foreground, one shot for the background. You stack the two as layers in Photoshop. You select one of those layers, let's say that top layer, and then you create a layer mask on that layer, and then you go over and grab the brush tool. And then you just brush out the bad part. say if that top layer has the overexposed foreground because it's the one that you exposed for, I mean, background, because it's the one that you exposed for the whirlpool, you just brush out the whole top of that layer and it reveals the properly exposed one underneath, and then you flatten the file. Google that, and you'll come up with a lot of YouTube videos, and you'll see it is really a simple thing to do. You're not getting into the HDRs and all of that stuff. This is a single exposure here. Now I could just say I would not shoot this if it wasn't kind of foggy like this. If it was just overcast, it'd be too much white from that sky showing through the trees, and it just wouldn't work very well. But it's okay for me with the fog. Now, the whirlpool down there, I had to put leaves in that, and I had to keep putting leaves for every shot because they kept washing out. And so I just collect up a whole big handful and just throw them in there, and then I get my shot. And I don't remember, it's probably about a 20 or 30-second exposure. And yeah, you can shoot that long during the day if you got a polarizing filter and you stop the lens down to f/22 and there's very little light there to begin with, and you use the lowest ISO setting that you have, you can do that. You can get those long exposures like that. So what do you do if the strong foreground is in the middle of the creek? Anybody? You get your butt in the middle of the creek. If it's safe to do so. And here it was perfectly safe for me to do that. I mean, I'm not about to stand on the edge and get a shot when there's something like this that I can get if I just get my feet a little wet. I mean, big whoop, right? So that's what it takes. And even here, even in wintertime in cold, icy water. So the thing about this one now is this waterfall's right beside the road. It's Looking Glass Falls. And my car is just less than it's about a 2-minute walk to get up the bank there, go up the steps to get there. So I could endure a little bit of cold feet to be able to get this shot. Now, if I'm out on a long hike somewhere, then I'm not going to get in the creeks in winter like this for that. But sure, I'd definitely do that. And you could carry, well, I know a lot of people will carry waders and stuff like that. I used to do that, but it's more trouble than it's worth. And plus with waders aren't real safe to wade in if you're doing a lot of walking around and stuff and scrambling to get in photo position and all. And then you crouch down to get a shot like this because the camera is only a couple feet away from the foreground, and then your waders fill up with water and all that stuff.
Yeah.
So here's the same waterfall, obviously not shot in winter, but still cold. Get right up on that rock. I mean, I'm less than a foot away from that rock with this wide angle lens, and I use my flashlight to throw a little light on that rock so that it would jump out a bit. So I get my feet wet a lot when I'm photographing waterfalls and stuff. And so my boots get wet too. And here's the solution that I come up with the wet boots.
I have 2 pair of boots with you at all times. That way, one pair is dry that I can change into, get out of these wet ones. And to get these wet ones dry for the next time, I've devised a system with what I call my boot dryer, where I can dry my boots while I'm riding down the road. Let me show you how it works. So my boot dryer attaches to my vent using Velcro very easily. Just run these hoses down into the boot. Turn the fan on high heat, 30 minutes, they're dry.
It works really well. Now, I will say this. It doesn't work that good. I don't use that anymore with my leather boots because I figured out that all of those wet dry cycles will shrink the leather up. And so it shortens the lifespan of the boots. But with synthetics, it would work great. With leather, you just need to let them air dry. All right, let's talk a little bit about composition here. my rule of composition for any photo subject is to try out all possible angles for it. And there's 7 potential angles for any subject, potential ones. Here's the 6 of them. And the 7th one is my favorite. It's actually getting inside you can. Like, for instance, I bet you like to get inside old cabins and stuff and shoot out the windows and stuff. I love doing that sort of stuff. Crawling in a hollow log and shooting out if you can. Anything you can do like that. I call that from the inside out. But the idea for all of them now is you can't visualize the shot and determine if it's going to be a good shot from the first place you walk up to. So you hike a trail to the waterfall and you come up to it and you got that first view. We all do this. I try not to, and I'm going to encourage you not to as well. And you stand there, you might take a few shots from that point, and then you're trying to decide if you should go somewhere else. Should you actually wade across the creek to get to the other side and get a shot from there? So you try to figure that out from where you're standing. And more often than not, you're going to talk yourself out of it. Well, don't do that. Just go on and wade across the creek and get over there, because I can tell you the only way you're going to know for sure if you're going to get a good shot from any other vantage point from where you're standing is to get your butt to that vantage point and see. And I promise you, if you do that, you're going to get a lot of good shots that you wouldn't have gotten otherwise. Now, from the inside out, the others are obvious, are real obvious. We don't need to talk about that. I just talked about it enough. But the inside out with the waterfalls is really cool. A lot of waterfalls have overhangs, so you can crawl up and get in behind them and shoot through the water. And I love doing that kind of photography. I assume you've got waterfalls up there that are like that. We don't have a ton of them in North Carolina, but just our neighbor over in Tennessee has a bunch in the Cumberland Plateau. But I just love doing it, and there's nothing unique about it at all. But it does add a little extra excitement to the real normal waterfall photos that you're used to seeing. So, and you can decide, it's your choice on whether or not you're going to put some detail in the rock overhang or the foreground or not. I could have used a flash to illuminate that rock above. I could have bracketed exposures and done a blend, similar to the way I just said. Or if it's extreme contrast, I wanted a lot of detail in the foreground, I could have merged them in an HDR. I usually don't do that. I usually leave it like this. I like to keep the foreground dark, particularly the rock overhang, because I think that adds to the effect of this kind of image. Remember the sunrise shot that I showed you with the waterfall? This is that waterfall. And so right after making that shot, before I lost the golden sun, is I quickly went behind it and shot through the water to get this. On another day at the same waterfall, I did it during the day. This shot works for one reason. It's because we do have a sunny day, a blue sky day. So here's another thing that you can think about for those sunny days. If this is an overcast day, I'm not even taking this shot. Why? Because think about it. White sky, white water. The water blends in with that white overcast sky. You get no delineation between the water and the sky. And to me, it's just not going to work. But with that blue back there, I think it works really well. Here I did the same thing. After a shoot, I showed you the shot earlier from in front. And after getting that, I ran. Well, I had to kind of walk gingerly, quickly and gingerly, because everything's covered in ice. I didn't really run, but I got back there as quick as I could before I lose the sun. And to get this shot, shooting through the water, the frozen water and icicles. The curvature effect on this is because I use my fisheye lens. I don't use it often, but when I do, I need it, and I really like the effect that it gives to the shot. I crawled up inside this little cavern area. This is Cavern Falls is the name of it, actually, shooting through it like that. I got thoroughly drenched, but so what? I mean, if you let a little physical discomfort little hunger, prevent you from hanging around and getting yourself into position for good shots, well, then your portfolio is just not going to be as good, is it? So think about that. Really, really work the scene. I can't tell you how often I lead a lot of photo tours, a lot of waterfall photo tours. We go out during the day. I've got night photo tours where I take people out and photograph the falls at night. And I can't tell you how many times I see people will go up to a scene and they'll take a few shots and then they'll just kind of hang around and wait for the rest of the group. And at some waterfalls, I'll admit, there's only maybe even one good shot that you can make. But I like to see people spend a little bit more time thinking about that, because very often there's a whole lot more that you can do. When you have a waterfall like this, especially, what a shame if I had made this shot and then just walked away and didn't spend more time. Think about it. There's lots of other shots, just even within this scene, not counting where if I move my position or I expand and get other areas in it. Just within this scene, think about all the different things you can do. You know, a vertical shot with the waterfall here, a tighter shot that comes in that just gets the oh gosh, a Virginia creeper here and the water coming across like that. And then tight shots that get in on just the water, all kinds of things that you can do. Now here I backed up so that I could get more of that cliff on the right. And here's that tight shot that was, or not real tight, but it's just got the vine and the waterfall in it. And then, so you work the scene like that. When you find a good situation like this, boy, I'm telling you, spend some time with it. So let's think about some other things too. Not just the different compositions, but pay attention to the lighting that's on the waterfall and compose for that lighting so that your composition is taking advantage of the particular. So I wanted to get an overall shot of this one, of course. But I paid attention. I thought I liked how, okay, our water here has got light. It's white. It's going to show up good. But all of the dark areas around there, I thought I could work with that if I just got in tighter with tighter compositions and stuff. And when I really started getting in tighter, and that's when I started having some fun and really like it. It's almost like a black and white photo. I just put in my 28 to 300 zoom lens and just zoomed in and out until I found compositions that I want. I mean, you might never think, you look at this right here and you might not think that, okay, just by putting on a longer lens and zooming into a little section, you could get that, but you can do that in lots of situations. And this might be something that would rescue a waterfall on a sunny day in the forest where maybe you can't shoot the entire waterfall, but you could pick out a section of it and shoot that. I love doing that. I really, really love my 28 to 300 lens because I can mount that booger on the tripod and just stand in one place and just zoom in and out if you got the right waterfall and just pick out these things. I love this waterfall. But for at least 15 years, it hasn't been suitable to photograph the overall thing because of all the clutter that's at the bottom of it. But gosh, the way that waterfall is arranged is just spectacular. But I could shoot tight shots, a little tight shots, and that's what I did. I picked out a little section of it. It was overcast when I got there, but the sun's kind of in and out. It was cloudy, not overcast. The sun was in and out of the clouds, and every time it would come out, I get that little double spray bow, which I thought was really cool. All right. Here's one. If you had never been to this waterfall before and you get there and the lighting situation's good as it is on this day, you should spend a couple hours with it. And you could spend a couple hours and never move because there's so much to do. When you have a waterfall with with a lot of little ledges where it's broken flow, and that water's flowing over moss covered rocks and stuff. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. All these, this same waterfall. Now, they weren't all shot on the same day. I will say that. I've been to this waterfall many times. I got, oh my God, I don't know how many photos I got. And every time I go, I take a bunch more, even though I've already got it. But I still keep shooting it because it's just such a great situation here. Just get right in. I mean, how could you not pick out tight shots and all in something like this? Oh my goodness. Just pull it out. You notice I used a little faster shutter speed here to get that effect. That's coming up, by the way. Little faster one here too, 15th of a second. I'll just go ahead and throw that out now. 15th of a second when you got tight shots with water and you want to get a little bit of, see the difference there? 15th of a second. Just get right in on all that. Yeah. Okay. There is no polarizing filter in Photoshop. Now, I've had people tell me that you can duplicate the effects in post-processing. And I'm pretty good at keeping my mouth shut. Pretty darn good at it, but I just can't keep my mouth shut with that because I'm sorry, you cannot duplicate the effects of a polarizing filter in Photoshop. You can do certain things with it in post-processing, but you cannot get the same effect. You just simply can't do it. So if you want to remove the glare from the rocks, the water, if you want to saturate the foliage, then you need to use a polarizing filter. Put it on, you rotate the filter to the desired intensity. Sometimes I don't go full strength. Sometimes I keep those reflections in the water and maybe only go half strength with it. But I promise you the only difference between these two shots, you might not believe me, and that's okay. If you haven't been using a polarizing filter, get one and go out and you're going to run across this. You'll see it for yourself. Here, which one do you think is the polarizing filter? That's right. It's the one on the left. And you can tell because there's no, look at this rock here and look at this rock here. The glare's removed here. Look at the rhododendron and the dog hobble and all in the foliage and how you got waxy leaves like that. It reflects a lot of the light, even on overcast days. This is overcast, okay? That polarizing filter is going to remove that glare and it's going to saturate everything. All right. Here's one with or without the filter, and here's another one with or without. Do you think this is with or without? This is without. We got glare all over the place. This is with. Now, I've had people tell me, I had one or two people tell me they actually like this one better, and that's fine. It's your photograph. You shoot them however you want to. But I'm just showing you the difference between the two, and you pick the one that you want. This is the one that I picked. All right, now let's talk about shutter speed. Oh my gosh. Do you want to start a fight? Just post a photo on Facebook that's got a silky water on it and say something like, this is the best way, or this is the only way to shoot water. You see it more often the other way around. It's really frozen. So, post something. If you want your photo to look real and not fake, then use a fast shutter speed or something like that. Well, you know what? Just shoot it the way you want to and don't worry. I can't tell you the vulgar remark that somebody made to me on a Facebook post when I posted a photo and he told me that my photo basically looked like crap because I used a long shutter speed for it, and that's not the way you should shoot water. And I responded with something along the lines of, I'm going to shoot my photos the way I want to, and you can shoot yours the way you want to. And I had to delete his comment afterwards because it was just absolutely vulgar. I mean, I don't understand it. I mean, really? To tell you the truth, I think this looks more real than when you freeze the water. I don't see water frozen with my eyes. The water's moving, and so I kind of see it moving with my eyes in a photo better. I don't know, but let's go through some different scenarios here. And you can see now, if you've got a whole bunch of water, a big river, then obviously you're going to need to shoot a faster shutter speed to freeze it. You don't need as long of a shutter speed to get the silky look. 60th of it. I wanted this. I wanted to show, instead of just white streaks that wouldn't, I wanted to show that it's basically falling. And so I used that. Here, I don't know why I did this. The only reason I keep this in the program now is just to show how I made a mistake. If you got a ton of water like this, you better not use long shutter speeds because it's going to blend that water. You'll just get a white sheet. Now, this is not too bad, but there should be more detail up here. I should have shot this at least a 60th of a second and adjusted my ISO and aperture to get that for it. I don't know why I only shot it at a 20th there. This one I showed earlier froze the water, so I used an 800th of a second for it. Bracket your shutter speeds, okay? And don't pay attention to your LCD when you do that. Please don't look at the back and then delete one, okay? I think you should only delete photos on your computer screen. You need to come back with everything, okay? But especially for something like shutter speeds and stuff, you need to really look at it and see, and look at it on the big screen. Here we got 4 seconds, and then here we got a 15th of a second. I said 15th is a good one to use to get this look, okay, in it. I kept both. I like both of them. Actually, I don't know which one I like the best here. I guess I really don't here. So bracket your shutter speeds, try all different kinds of them. Don't let anybody tell you that the silky look is wrong. You just shoot them the way that you want to shoot them. And I hope that you don't get that guy come across making comments on your Facebook page. I mean, it was nasty what he said. Why?
Yeah.
Gosh. Okay. So I'm not a people photographer. I don't do portraits. I've gotten to where and I'm starting to enjoy it, but I like to photograph people in the landscape, not just portrait types of photos. This is my lovely wife, Patricia. And this is a typical kind of photo that you might make at a waterfall. I like it, but I don't do a lot of this because it's commonplace and stuff. So what I like to do is come up with other ideas for using people at the waterfalls, like this. I got my friend Donna to post. She put on this really cool witchy outfit and wig and stuff. And then I post her at a waterfall. She's standing behind it. And obviously, well, actually, that's not obvious in it. She could be standing in front of it, but she's standing behind it. And because it's got a big overhang on this one. And then I'm illuminating her with a flashlight. A flash is just kind of hard to direct that light, and it gets harsh and everything. So I use a flashlight, and then I take several exposures, and I do separate exposures for the waterfall. We'll talk more about this coming up in the second half of the program with the night photography. And here's another one that I did. I wanted to recreate that scene in the Last of the Mohicans when they're behind the famous behind the waterfall scene where Hawkeye's talking to Cora and he's saying, "I will find you." And then he jumps through the waterfall. Really cool. Well, I wanted to duplicate that. So I did my research. I figured out how to make these torches and all that. And we got behind that same waterfall. I've got it just quickly. I set up an LED light panel behind it, dialed it to blue to give that deep twilight look. I made that torch. That you take toilet paper, you roll it up you make a rope out of it, you wrap it around there, you dip it into lamp oil. The movie industry has something else, but lamp oil works really good. Set it on, that thing will burn. It took us 15 minutes to make this shot, and our torch was still burning. I made all the stuff for it. Well, actually, I had some old leather, so I made his breechcloth, but this is the tool bag that came with my bike rack to hang around. I wanted all the stuff to look just like it was in the movie. Here's the embrace scene. I didn't have a white dress to give her to wear, so this is my white dress shirt that she has on. Okay, a little bit about the seasons here. Winter is good, obviously, for the snow and ice and stuff like that. But I also like winter because I like the snow because it covers up cluttered scenes. You know, waterfalls get a lot of clutter. That one shot that I showed you, that waterfall that I really like, but has all those fallen logs and stuff. If I could happen to be there when they're all covered in snow, then that could work because they don't look cluttery when you have that. Now this is frozen spray, but it's doing the same thing because this is a real weedy growth here on the side of this waterfall, and it wouldn't look nearly good without that frozen spray on it. And with overhanging waterfalls, you get, if it's real cold for extended periods, this is what you get. You get that volcano that slowly builds up, and it's cool. With spring, wildflowers, there's not that many waterfalls, or at least we don't have that many where you can get this kind of shot. And when you find one that you can, you need to be extremely careful. I can't tell you how many times I've seen photographers, they're always so careful not to harm their subjects. I mean, really careful. They don't want to destroy what they're photographing, but in the process of not destroying what they're photographing, they're destroying everything else around them, where they lay down on the ground or plop their pack down on top of a wildflower or something like that. So if you got a whole bunch of wildflowers around, you just got to be really careful not to do that. Like I said, there's not that many. I'm right up on this with the wide angle lens, right? I mean, inches away from this flower. And sometimes you might have to, you could do focus stacking, but I couldn't here if I wanted to because this guy's blowing in the wind, not good. As it turns out, I don't have enough depth of field fully to cover back here, but I don't care. Here's the focal length, or the focal point of this is the wildflower, and I've got plenty of depth of field here. Also, I did a lot of shots where I focused on the flower and then focused on the water. So I do have some where the trees back here are in focus, and I just stack those two together, not a focus stack, but using the technique that I just mentioned. Summer only works for me usually if it's rainy or foggy or something like that. All the people out, the haze and stuff, the lighting just doesn't look as good. But with rain, oh boy, it can do really good for that. And of course, fall, fall, we don't have to spend a lot of time there. You get that fall color to shoot. So here we go. We'll wrap up the daytime shooting here. It's really very simple. If you follow these five tips right here, you're gonna make some good waterfall photos for sure. All right, you ready to have some fun? Yeah, let's have some fun. Ooh, so with any night photography, or most any night photography, cityscapes and street photography accepted, something like that. But if you're photographing nature at night, you can't do like a daytime photographer. A daytime photographer and just go out and photograph what he sees, but you can't do that at night because, you can't see anything. So you photograph what's up here, what's in your mind. You need to learn what happens when you use great big wide open apertures and really high shutter speeds and long shutter speeds and really high ISOs, how that affects different subjects. And then you can start to visualize your photos ahead of time, and you go out with that image in your mind. You actually create what's in your mind, just like a painter would reproduce what's in their mind onto a canvas. That's the way you need to think about it, because if you don't, you're going to miss some really good shots. 99% of my night photography is that it's going out and getting the shot that's already in my mind. So back to Mount LeConte and Grotto Falls. Remember, I showed you up front. The llamas went behind it. Well, hikers do too. So if you were up at Mount LeConte and you were hiking back and you didn't do your time well, and you get behind the falls and it's already dark, you still got a mile and a half to go. If you're not thinking like a night photographer, you just want to get back to the car. And so you're shining that flashlight straight ahead. But a night photographer is going to think, wait a minute. Huh. If I take my flashlight, maybe if I put a blue gel filter over the light to color the light a little bit, and I just pointed at the waterfall instead of the trail in front of me, then I can get this. You don't see this with your eyes. This is what you see with your eyes. You see this with your mind, because you already knew that if you shine that light there and you kind of move it up and down like a paintbrush, then that's what you're going to get. So we're just like painters, except a painter has a white canvas they start out with, and they put pigments on that canvas to create their scene, their image. We start out with the black canvas and we put light on it, and it's our canvas. It's your canvas. You can do whatever you want to it. You can throw that light into it however you want to. It's important to remember that. So this might be your black canvas at a waterfall. Sure, you're going to see some stuff. You'll see some stars. Once you process the stars out, they're going to show up better though. But so here's your black canvas. And you pull out a flashlight with the blue gel filter and you paint a little bit onto that black canvas and you get the waterfall. And then you take a waterproof flashlight and you take a bigger gel filter and you wrap it around it, maybe put a rubber band around it to hold it in front, and you stick that flashlight under the water, you can paint more of your canvas. And let's say that you've had just a little bit too much to smoke, and you put a green gel filter over your flashlight and you decide to go paint all those trees like crazy, and you can get this. I'm embarrassed to say that I didn't actually do this as an example. It ended up being an example shot once I saw it. But remember though, it's your canvas. So if you like this, then this is the way you need to paint it. Now, all of these different elements I shot on different exposures. Of course, you have to do it that way with the night photography. You can't do all this in one shot. But it's a whole lot easier. I've had people talk about that takes away from it. It's not really photography or whatever, something like that. Oh, come on, give me a break. This makes it a whole lot easier because you got a lot more control over what you're doing. We're going to be talking more about that. So what do you use to light paint with? When I first started, it was either a flash or a flashlight, mostly flashlight. Okay. Flash for me is useful only when I want to freeze motion. It will freeze the motion of your waterfall like this. So that can be very effective for shots. A flashlight, you're going to have a longer exposure. So you're going to get that silky look that a lot of people think is fake and it's not even photography. Camera flash, we freeze the water. Flashlight, we get the silky look. Now, I now am using an LED light panel mounted on a little tripod for a lot of my night photography work. You're going to get that silky look just like you do with a flashlight with that. The problem with the camera flash is it's like a broad brush. If you are a house painter and you're painting the siding on that house, and you're doing it with brush and not spraying, then you're going to choose the biggest brush. You're going to get that 4-inch wide brush. You just want to get as much paint on that side as quickly as possible. But once you move over to the window trim, you're going to switch to the little 1.5-inch angle trim brush, aren't you? So that you don't get paint all over the siding and all over the glass. Well, your flashlight is the trim brush. If you get a flashlight that lets you zoom in and out the light, and a lot of them let you do that. So you can zoom it into just a really tight spot and you can really control what you're doing. Now, the light panel is a broad brush, but the advantage of it over flash is that you can see the light. With the flash, you don't know what you got until you fired the flash. With the light panel, you can set it up and aim it and get that look exactly the way that you want it. So in cases where you don't need to do detailed lighting in certain areas, if it's okay to throw light over the whole scene, the light panel works really well. And most light, or a lot of light panels now will let you dial the color of the light, which works really good. Now for the flashlight to change the color, I use these little gel filters. These are swatch books that you can get. You can get these for a few bucks from B&H and stuff, or Adorama. You'll pay more for shipping than you will for the actual swatch book itself, probably. And you just rip them out, and then you can hold it over the flashlight. You can rubber band it or whatever. Roscoe sells flash packs. That Digital After Dark actually used to be my trademark. They got me to pick the colors for the flashes. That's my photo, by the way. All I got was a couple of free packs of these things. It just wasn't worth it for me. But the advantage of these things is they're longer, so they wrap around the flashlight better. I designed this guy, the gel grip, to hold those in, but I do a lot of this. You don't need this. If you really get into it, you're going to need a better method than just holding it or rubber banding it on there. And this works really well to hold them on. So let's look at what you can do by coloring the light here, okay? Remember, it's your canvas, right? Now, I think there's probably enough people in this program that there might be one or two of you that will think the same as I've heard other people will say when I give this program, and they just kind of shake their head, especially when I show my Prince tribute filter. And they'll say, you probably can imagine what they might be saying, and that's kind of it. As if anything we do in night photography and throwing all these lights around is really real to begin with. But here's my response to that. I mean, I've had some people even say that's not even photography for it. Well, I got news for you. I don't care what people think. Remember, it's my black canvas, and I can paint it however I want to, and you can paint yours however you want to too. But here's how I really respond to people that say that's not real. I say, okay, all right, I'm with you. I'm with you. We're talking about night photography here, and you want real, so I'm going to give you real. See, here's the thing. When you photograph at night and you get away from a cityscape, there's no light on anything, so you can't see it. So you light it. You put a light on it. The minute you pull out that light, you've taken what their idea of reality is out of the equation, right? I can put a red light, I can put a purple light on it. It doesn't matter. And I tell you what, if I put a purple light on it, then the waterfall looks purple. So in a way, that is reality, right? That's the reality of the situation. So, but back to just paint them just do whatever you want to. It's your photo. Don't worry about what people say with that. I love twilight. I just love photographing all kinds of things in twilight. Unfortunately, we don't have a ton of, just like with sunrise and sunset, we don't have a ton of waterfalls here that are good for photographing in twilight. We do have some, though. And those that we do have, I treasure them to be able to shoot in that. I just love the quality of that light. There's no extra lighting in this scene. With waterfalls, you got white. And of course, we've got white with ice here too. So it bounces the light around a whole lot. And so usually you can do pretty good if you've got at minimal light levels with the scene. Now with this one I did, I illuminated the foreground and the waterfall with the flashlight. This is a single exposure, by the way. I didn't have to do the multiple exposures with this one for that. obviously I'm not in North Carolina here. My wife and I made a trip to Hawaii many moons ago for her 50th birthday. And I was excited to find this little waterfall that was dropping directly into the ocean. I wasn't quite as excited when I kept getting hit by the waves and my camera kept getting hit by the waves. But so I came back at twilight so that I could get sunset and twilight so that I could get this. This is flashlight is illuminating the waterfall and the foreground on this one. Okay, this is probably what you've been waiting for. So you can pull out your camera and or your phone and take a shot at this if you want to. But remember, this is being recorded, so you can go back and watch it again. So now this can vary a lot, okay? Just to get, I mean, it really can. The wide open aperture that's pretty standard for that. F4 is about as small as you want to go, just simply because if you try to shoot at 5, 6, or 8 or so, then you're going to have a longer shutter speed, which is going to streak the stars. And we're talking pinpoint static stars here, and you don't want to do that. ISO, actually, my standard exposure for the night sky, I'll just say, is 13 seconds, ISO 6400, and f 3.5. The reason I don't go f2.8 on my lens is that little extra half a stop or so helps with the coma, the distortion of the stars a bit. So yeah, this can vary, but you don't want to get too long on that shutter speed, okay? The best way to know if you're getting the streaks is just take a shot at what you're thinking about and then magnify it on your LCD and look at it. But for waterfalls that you can include the sky with, then that's really cool to have those stars in there. You always, almost always will need, I always will need to shoot the sky on a separate layer from thing. I can promise you with the sky exposure that you have to light paint the waterfall, you're going to have to get that light painting done in a half a second. I mean, think about it. ISO 6400, are you kidding? There's no way that you can direct that light, and you got to do it in a single exposure too. You want to do those multiple exposures of the foreground, because what happens if you shine that light for too long in one spot and it's hot spotted? The image is ruined. But if you do half a dozen of them, then you're going to have one where you didn't shine too long in that one spot. And by stacking all those as layers and using layer mask, you can just brush out the bad one, the bad part of that one, and make it work. So that's the reason that we do that. Flashlight here, a half dozen light painting exposures for the foreground, and then one for the sky at that sky exposure. Same old, same old. Now, Milky Way, you can take your phone out and take a shot at this, but I can tell you it's a trick, because it's the same. I mean, it's all the night sky, right? So your exposure for the Milky Way is going to be the same for the stars. I don't do stacking, exposure stacking. My base exposure, as I said, 6400, 13 seconds. And that's with the 14 millimeter lens, by the way. So I'm really picky about not getting those streaks. And f3.8, sometimes 3.5, or sometimes 2.8. That's fine. I can get my Milky Way in there with that. And now I know that you can get it brighter, and there's a few other advantages in doing that, but it also adds a lot of extra post-processing and stuff. So I do that one exposure, and I can get this with it, and I'm happy with that. Now, I don't ultra process my Milky Way. I see a lot of them that, to my eye, are just garish and jump out at you in just crazy colors and stuff like that. Now, if that was the look that I like, then maybe I would need to do that exposure stacking and then using the software to put it together. But so I waited around here a couple of hours for the Milky Way to move across the sky so that it will get in just the right position here, and a few exposures or flashlight paintings for the foreground to go with it. In the same situation here. One exposure only for the sky, and then separate exposures. You need, when you're doing the foreground light painting, don't do the trees up here. You need to have that black transition if you can, or blank transition between the foreground and the sky. And that way, when you stack them together and then you change the blend mode to lighten, which is what you want, lighten blend mode when you get those two stacks, it'll work beautifully. But if you have light painted trees up here, then some of those light levels in the trees might sort of match some of the light levels in the sky, and the light and blend mode will just make it look wonky and not work well. And you're going to have to do a lot of extra tedious post-processing to make it work. So you notice here, I keep my light painting down in here, away from up here. And that, and besides, I like that look better anyway for that. And whenever you can, you want to get over to the side with your light painting, so you create some shadows and stuff. I couldn't get far. Even holding your arm out as far as you can, or dropping that flashlight down to foot level instead of eye level, can make a big difference, especially if your foreground is fairly close, okay? So try to create a triangle where your subject, the waterfall, the camera, and the light source are the 3 points of the triangle, and you'll have much better lighting. Now, a lot of waterfalls, you can't do that. You basically have to shoot from where you're standing, but if you can, just hold it out with your arm, like I said. All right, you notice anything about this? It's the same exposure. So there are different ways that you can shoot meteors. Like if you want to have a sky full of them, that's different, okay, in one shot. But if you just want to capture one meteor against the night sky, then use your regular sky exposure and then just shoot continuous exposures. Like set it up on C and just shoot one after the other. Maybe change your composition as the stars move across the sky, you know, to get a better composition. And that's what I did here. And you hope that a meteor shows up. Now, you're probably only going to do this when a meteor shower is going on to increase your chances. And boy, did I ever get lucky with this guy. And you can tell this is a Persea, by the way, because it's purple and green, which they often have those colors like that. So now it's kind of hard when you show photos like this, because people automatically think it's AI or you build it in Photoshop. I can promise you, the only thing I used Photoshop in this was to stack my sky exposure that had the Milky Way and the meteor in it with this bottom exposure right here. In other words, this is exactly what I saw and experienced that night. Star trails, boy, this can really vary. I'm just going to tell you. I put it up here just as something easy to remember. All the fours, F4 400 in 4 minutes. But you can change it using the reciprocity. You can change that around to all kinds of things. You know, go ISO 200 and 8 minutes or something. You know, whatever you can do. But the idea with the star trails is you're shooting continuous exposures to build up those trails. You stack them, change the blend mode to lighten, or you can use special software. There's one called Star Stacks that will let you do it very easily. And then you stack that exposure with the foreground that you have light painted in the same manner that we have been talking about here. This is what you get if you point north. You get circular star trails. I really like that effect with that. This comes easy for me. Oh, wait a minute. Why is that in here? I told you I was going to get better and not make any more mistakes. Somehow or another, I got a daytime photo stuck it. Oh, wait a minute. Oh, that's right. That's not a daytime photo. That's a middle of the night photo. You believe that? Actually, this one you can believe. I shot this at midnight, and there's no other light painting in this either. Believe that? Well, believe it. If you go out when you've got close to a full moon, and if you got a scene like this where the moon's kind of fully illuminating the whole scene, by gollies, this is what you get. That moon is behind me, and it's illuminating the whole scene. We got a blue sky, and if you could pixel peep this, you'd see stars in that blue sky. That's pretty cool. I tell you, the first time I did this years ago, I could not believe my eyes. But you can go out on a moonlit night and shoot landscapes just like you would during the day. And you'll get a blue sky with stars in it. Now, follow the same things. You wouldn't point your camera directly at the sun shooting a landscape, except in certain situations. You wouldn't do it with the moon either. So follow all those same sort of principles, and you can get some cool shots. This is about a half full moon here. It lights up those clouds and it gives you that blue sky. You see those little white dots up in there? That's not noise, folks. Those are stars. Wow. Can you believe it? And no other light painting done with this. And also single exposure with this one on the first one I showed you, and on this one, because I didn't, and I had to light paint the waterfall here because the moon's not illuminating the waterfall. But it is here and it is here. And so I got it in a single exposure. Can you tell where the moon is? You see how the sky's just a little bit lighter here, and you see these shadows down here. So my moon's like right over here in there. All right, we got moonlights hitting the trees over here. I don't have to light paint that, but I did have to light paint a little bit down in here because it's not hitting that yet. So, okay, are you ready to have a lot of fun now? I mean, some cool stuff. Cool stuff. Underwater light painting. Underwater. And why underwater fall, you ask? Well, here's why. If you take that flashlight and you shine it on the pool, well, that pool is going to absorb that light just like a sponge. The only reason we have any light at all on this pool is not because I shone it at the pool, but because I pointed the light at the waterfall. And that light is reflecting from the waterfall on the pool. That's the only reason we have any light on it at all. But this is all you're going to get if you keep that light above the water. But when you put it under the water, what happens is that light, unless that, you're never going to have perfectly clear water. So there's a lot of sediment and stuff in there. And that light bounces off all that stuff and it creates a glow. And it hits the ground at the pebbles and the sand and the edges of the rocks and all that sort of stuff. And so it gives you this shot that I showed you before. It's just really cool. It's a whole different look. I love doing this. Now, the idea is you're not going to get this in a single exposure either. It's going to take a bunch of them. Like a lot of waterfalls, I might have 50 or 60 exposures for the underwater part. I'm just doing one after the other after the other. I do a few test shots to make sure I'm getting it right. Some of them are going to be blown out. Some of them are going to be too dark. That's all right. You get the midline. You know, maybe it's somewhere around, let's say 15 seconds and ISO 800 and f456, let's say. And the filter, the color of the filter will affect that too. Set it up on continuously, and then you just get in that pool and you're running that flashlight around in that pool. One shot after the other, it's taking one shot after the other. You don't show up because you're not pointing that light on you. It's only showing up in the water. Now, to color that light, you need those filters. Roscoe makes larger size filters. They're 12 inches square. And you can cut them down so that you can get a bigger size. You need that bigger size, okay? So that you can totally wrap it around the front of the flashlight. If you don't, if you try to use one of those swatch book filters, then that white light's going to leak out of the edge and it's just not going to work. So you need to totally wrap it. You can rubber band it if you're only doing it a few times. You can see I got Velcro wrapped around my flashlight. I wrapped just the right amount of Velcro around it. And I got this compression sleeve from the plumbing department of the man store. And then when you put that filter, you hold that filter around it, and then that compression sleeve, you slide it on there, and it's just the right tension to hold it in place. You don't want to walk around holding that light under the water. So I made this pole. I bought a clamp from the man store, and I cut off the handle from a painter's roller and glued it on there. And then I can clamp that to the flashlight, and then I had this little kind of extension pole. You could use a broom handle or anything that screws on to that. And so now I can walk around in relative ease. You got to be careful though. You know, it's nighttime. It's best to walk around that pool in the day and make sure there aren't any steep drop offs. That's happened to me. It happened to me one time when it was 20 degrees and I filled up my waders. But that's what you do. And then you just keep walking around and walking around. Experiment in your bathtub. Laugh at me. Just go right ahead and laugh at me, okay? But try it. You won't be laughing after you do it. Put some soap in there, get some sediment and stuff in there going. And then turn all the lights out and stick that flashlight under your bathtub and move it around a little bit and see what you get. All right. Hey, maybe do it in your toilet if you want a cool shot. So now here I had to swim the pool. It's too deep to walk around. So I had a flashlight in each hand. When I swim, that's what I do. It maximizes the time, right? And I'm wearing a life jacket and I'm just sort of dog paddling or swimming around with that, holding it around and getting that. The camera shooting continuous exposures, one after the other after the other. I stack them later with that. Some you go for subtle. You know, you have control over which ones you use. I stack 50 of them and then I turn the eyeballs off of all of them and then I turn them back on one at a time. And the layers, you know, and I see, does that new layer help it? If it doesn't, I turn it back off. If it helps it, but there's one area that's too bright, I create a layer mask and brush out that part. And I just go through that process with the whole thing. So it is, isn't it? It's some pretty darn strange stuff, but it's a lot of fun. And while there's nothing, you know, wildly unique about it at all, then you're going to create some photographs that most people aren't doing and might not be familiar with. And so that's a pretty good feeling too. All right, so I'm just going to leave you with this one thought. I'm a true believer of that. That's my quote, by the way. That's why there's no name there. So I want to thank you all very much. I hope you got tons and tons of questions for me. I love answering questions. And I hope you go to my website. I've got my 2025 photo tours posted up. I still have a few opens for some of the night waterfalls and I think I might even have one or two openings for the daytime waterfall stuff. But would love to have one of you join me on a trip like that. So thank you again, and I am ready for your questions.
Well, thank you, Kevin. That was really interesting. I got two questions that I saw for sure. You sort of covered what shutter speeds to use, so you're just choosing the speed to fit your artistic idea of the waterfall, I take it.
Kinda, yeah. Yeah, yes is the answer to that question. But your shutter speed is sometimes dictated, or at least within a stop or so is dictated. You get into a low light situation because it's overcast or because it's rainy or something. You're using a polarizing filter, which is going to cut light. You need X amount of depth of field, so you stop the lens down to get that. And all of that combined is going to give you a fairly long shutter speed, to the point that you're going to get that silky look whether you want it or not. Now you can crank up the ISO to 50 billion, then yeah, you don't have to get that silky look, but then the photo just doesn't, the quality is not that good. So I don't worry about that. I like the silky look anyway, so I just go ahead and shoot at whatever that shutter speed happens to come up to be with that. When I bracket exposures, I mean shutter speeds, it's more often when I'm doing isolated shots, tight shots, when I'm shooting free falling waterfalls, where I know that I'm going to get a totally different look between a fast shutter speed and a slower shutter speed, like that. But I'd say for the most of the shots, it's basically, okay, this is what the shutter speed comes up to be. Always having to be careful about photographing in sunlight with the waterfalls. if there's a lot of water in there, because a slower shutter speed just creates nothing but a sheet of white, and you can't have that. So I always have to watch out for that.
Okay. Do you use time-lapse techniques for night? That was one of the questions.
No, I don't. I'd like to learn a lot more about doing all kinds of things.
Yeah,
I don't have
we're
time.
always learning.
I don't have the bandwidth for all of the different things that I want to do. So no, I've never done any time lapse.
Okay.
Uh,
Were you, so when you're doing the underwater shots, you just have the camera just shooting a set shutter speed and then having it just keep going one after the other?
That's it. You should do a couple of test exposures first, just to make sure that it's not too bright or too dark, and set it on continuous. Once you get that set it on continuous, and then you just have at it. You want to get a lot of them. I mean, you might spend even in a small pool, you might spend 10 minutes just walking around that pool with that, because a lot of those shots aren't going to work out. The ones particularly where the light happens to be pointed directly towards the camera is probably going to be too bright for it. You'll have to cut those out of it. And you want to make sure that you've got it all covered pretty good. You don't want any areas of the pool that are completely black. It's okay to have small little areas here and there. You need that contrast, but not a third of the pool, not that kind
Sure.
of thing. So that's it. Just
Okay.
set it up and let her go.
All right. I take it the flashlight that you're using for underwater is one that's made for underwater or is waterproof somehow?
Correct. Actually, it's waterproof. I'm not sure that the one that I'm using now is made for underwater. I think it's really a flashlight that's just, they call it shockproof and waterproof, but they recommend it for
Okay.
that and night. Coast Portland they make all my flashlights. I like them. They're good. Polyseal, I think, is their little brand name for their waterproof flashlights. You can often find those flashlights at like Walmart, and Man Store, and for not a lot of money, $30 or so, you can
Yeah.
get a decent one for it. Yeah.
Yeah. Any way to find out water flow volumes at a waterfall online? That's a tricky question.
Well, it is because most of the gauges for the streams aren't for the waterfalls. They'll be farther downstream. And I'm not sure how you would apply it.
Yeah.
You'd have to actually have visited that waterfall to get a baseline to even know how to apply it.
Yeah. And heck, volume can change, especially if it's raining or whatever. I know my favorite times to shoot waterfalls was always in the rain.
Yeah, even if you had an automatic gauge that some rivers have, you'd have to check it like right before you're going.
Yeah. So I've got, Dan is asking, you're not using continuous bulb. You've got it just set so that your cable release is locked on, so it just shoots one right after the other.
That's
Okay.
correct. Yeah,
All right.
continuous high and lock it down. You need that method for. By the way, I use wired shutter releases. I do not. They frustrate. I'm just going to tell you right now. I've tried those remote ones.
Yeah.
No, they frustrate the heck out of me, and half the time they don't work for me. If they work for you, God, I am so happy for you. But no, I.
Uh-oh. He froze again. Oh,
Oh,
you're
no.
back.
I'm back. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I was going to say, At least now I could call you up and we could do this, the rest of it over the phone, right?
Right, right.
Okay, what else?
Let's see. We're getting anybody from the panel have any questions while I search the comments
I guess
quick?
I got two things. First, Kevin, can you back up one slide? I almost was not quite fast enough to screenshot that. My real question though, is when you're out, are you mostly alone or are you going with other people when you're out? Because I mean, the time of day, especially the night stuff, the weather. I mean, it's just not the safest to be out alone. So
Yeah, that's often the first question I get when I talk about night photography. And a lot of people are surprised when I tell them I'm always alone. I don't work well with other people. I'm always um, wanting to look out for them and make sure I'm not taking too much time or something like that, you know. So I like to have that full creative control and be by myself. And sometimes I'm just not the most pleasant person to be around anyway. I understand that. So as far as the safety part of it, I'm very careful. I like to say the most dangerous thing that I ever do in my photography is drive to my subject. Even for the night photography stuff. Now I did have one night in Central Park in New York that where I wasn't very smart, but that'll never happen again. I'll say that. But yeah, I'm real careful with that. Now with the waterfalls in particular, you really need to watch it, okay? That's why I say get out there in the daytime first. Please don't think you're going to go do a night shot of a waterfall that you have never been to before during the day. That is not safe at all, unless it's at a park where you got a paved walkway going up to an overlook, you know. Niagara Falls, okay, you can do that. But are these waterfalls in the woods and stuff like that, you need to hike that trail. And if you're going to do the underwater light painting, you need to get in that pool. Don't just look at it in the day. Get in the pool and wait around so that you know what to expect for that. I would say that it's going to be safer if you take somebody with you. Just take them and make sure they have the understanding up front. The only reason they're going is to drag your butt out of there if you trip over something when you're doing the light painting, you know, and they're just going to have to sit there and be quiet for the whole time you're there. It would be safer, but I just can't find anybody that would do that.
yeah. Well, I mean, I see on your website you are also a drone photographer, and of course, a lot of times we'll have a visual observer, and it's kind of a similar thing, doing what you're doing, and that to me is a good thing.
Yeah, and it's hard to light paint and have two photographers working at the same time. It's that just doesn't work.
It doesn't work. And when I get on my photo tours, my waterfalls at night photo tours, I explain to the people, so you're going to get your shots, and you can do light painting, but when we're actually doing the actual shooting, I have to do the light painting for you. It's only limited to 4 people. I won't let more than 4 go. So that works out pretty good, and they'll set up, and then I'll demonstrate all the different light painting techniques, set up the light panel, and then use the flashlight. They're all capturing the same thing. Now they can process that shot the way they want to, and 4 people getting the same light painting, I promise you they're going to have 4 completely different finished photos when they're done. But yeah, there's no way I could have those people out there, all of them trying to paint at the same time. That does not work.
No. I've had that happen once or twice, and it just is total chaos. With moonlighting, have you tried different moon phases to see if the amount of moonlight is generally better?
Absolutely. You 2 weeks out of the month for landscape illuminated by the moon. So that means, say the moon just turned half full, you got 2 weeks. First week it take it to get to full, and then the next week it goes back to the next half full, and that's plenty of light. Now, your exposures will change. Of course, the more light, then you got to change the exposure based on that. And here's something to keep in mind. I should actually mention this. The quality of the light will change as well. Think about it like this. If you photograph with the sun directly over your head and it's fully illuminating the scene in front of you, you're going to get flat lighting, and it may work okay. And for a moonlit shot, simply because it's a moonlit shot and people aren't expecting it, and you got white stars, you little dot stars in the skies, you're still going to get that wow factor with it. But with a half full moon, then the quality of the light is going to be different. That's when you're going to start getting more, like I said, remember the triangle lighting I suggested using your light painting? Well, it's similar with that half full moon. It's lower in the sky and it's not as much light. And so it just gives a different quality to the light. So go through it all, photograph it in all different times for sure. Yeah.
Let's see, when you are shooting waterfalls that you aren't familiar with, do you use a drone to scout locations? Thinking of this because of the wet terrain.
Yeah. Well, I think that's a good idea. I've never done that before. I've never used the drone to scout. I guess I've never needed to. I just go on and hike to them.
I think the only thing you'd really have to consider there, if you were to do that, is it allowable to do that? Because there's just a lot of airspace, in national parks, state wildlife areas, national wild, that you just can't use drones. So because most waterfalls are probably in areas like that, it may not be the most practical application as much as we would like it to be.
Such a good point, and I can't tell you how many times I see somebody post a drone shot that they made in a national park or a wilderness area or something like that, or a state park here. That happens a lot. We have one area here, which is fortunate. We have lots of acreage in national forests that I live close by, and so I can fly my drone there, except for the wilderness areas and a few other areas. But other than that, I've got the Blue Ridge Parkway, Great Smoky Mountains National Park, state parks, all these wonderful areas, and no, I can't fly the drone in that. And you know what? That's okay. I'm perfectly happy that those are off limits, to tell you the truth.
I've flown my drone around a waterfall before, and there's two issues with it. Usually the shutter speed is faster than I want for the water flowing. But the other issue that I've had with it is usually when there's a waterfall, there's a lot of trees around. And I have found one in the park, in the wild nature park nearby, very difficult to fly the drone in and around the trees, and afraid that I'm gonna hit a branch or something, and had to be so careful that it almost wasn't worth it.
Those are two very, very good points.
And there's actually a third consideration there as well, because the waterfalls, especially bigger waterfalls, are putting off a lot of pressure. So you have to be careful of inversion factors, temperature changes, moisture levels. There's just a lot to consider doing that if you're going to try and fly near a waterfall.
Absolutely. Such good points. I'd like to expand on that a bit too, because I think that's important. I never use my drone for up close waterfall photography for the reasons that you just stated. All of those, very well put. So I use my drone. It's always flying high. It's getting more of an overall higher aerial type look. The other thing is that most drones, or my drone, let's put it that way, will only shoot a horizontal. So the composition might not be what I want it to be if I try to shoot up close. So I get back from a distance for all of those reasons. And as far as the shutter speed goes, well, it helps that you are from a distance, so it doesn't show it that much being a faster shutter speed, but it's just a trade-off that you have to have, because I guess obviously if you tried to shoot a 4-second exposure with the drone, then it's probably not, the overall image is probably not going to be too sharp. But yeah, that I see that, and I've had people I take on my photo tour, or not photo tours, but I've done a lot of private instruction where I'll take people out, just one-on-one instruction, and several of them have brought their drones. And if it's legal to fly in that area, I'll let them do it as long as there's not other people around. And they'll do it. And I know they're not getting, and we talk about it a little bit, but they want to get the shots. They want to do it. It's, so go ahead. I'll tell you a funny right quick. I don't know if I have time or not. Tell me to shut up if I need to. So I had a guy, he was flying his little drone, and he crashed it. He crashed it down the bank. There's a bunch of rocks and stuff. They crashed it down the bank, and I wasn't too far away from him, but I didn't see him crash it. And he walked back up, and he said, "I crashed my drone." He said, "Let's go." I said, "You're not going to try to get it back?" He said, "No, it's down that bank." I said, "Come on, man." So I went over there. I climbed down the bank, and I walked straight to it. And I picked it up. I climbed back up the bank, and I handed it to him, and he's looking at it, and he's staring at it, and he looks kind of funny. He says, "This is not mine." It wasn't the same model, but there was some minor little difference, and he could tell instantly that it wasn't his.
Yeah. The only downside to that is, I mean, if he's got it properly marked, somebody's going to find it, and then FAA gets involved, you know. But
yeah, but I went back down there, and I found his. I brought it back to him, and then I took the one that I found, and I didn't feel comfortable doing this, but how are you going to find the person? So I looked at the shots, and I got enough information from the scenes. I made a Facebook post and actually was able to locate the owner of the drone, and which I thought was really cool. And I told him I'd send it back to him if he'd pay for shipping, and so I did. And let's just say the shipping was $15.76. Let's just say, and so I gave him my Zoom account. And he put $15.76 in it, and I thought, okay, well, he paid for shipping. I thought I would have rounded it up to 20 myself. Actually, I would have rounded it up a lot higher, but at least he paid for my shipping.
Well, the drone has to have the FAA registration number on it. I wonder if I don't know if individual can get that information from the FAA.
Only partially though, Dreama, because if it's under 250 grams and you're flying recreationally, technically you don't have to have it marked. But
it wasn't marked.
Oh,
Yeah.
Well, inquiring mind wants to know, do you find any stills back in the woods?
Oh God, I want to so much. I have friends. I have waterfalling friends that run across them. I know this guy that's found like 100 stills in Stone Mountain State Park. None of them right at waterfalls, but he's found a bunch. I found artifacts that probably were from stills, but I can't say for sure. And I photographed remains of stills, but I already knew that it was there.
Yeah.
I want to come upon that so badly sometime.
You'll have to pick the right weather conditions so you can see them burning off the moisture.
Well, I don't think there's any more active ones. I'm just talking about old abandoned ones, from way back when.
That's probably safer.
Mm-hmm. I would not want to come across one still in operation. Let's just get that. Okay.
Anybody else have any other questions? Looks like I've run through everything that was in the chat.
I was wondering, do you use a headlamp to operate your camera at night?
Yeah. Yes. I do.
And I was wondering also, my experience has been around waterfalls. There's a lot of slipperiness, like moss-covered wet rocks and all. What do you use any kind of specialized footwear, hiking boots?
Well, I like to use high top leather hiking boots, just to give that extra support. I don't go out in like sneaker type shoes for it. And I'm wearing those boots, when I'm wading the pools for the light painting as well. That's very important because it's so easy to step on a rock and twist an ankle when you're doing that. But no other things. Now, if I'm out in wintertime, and I have done, well, you saw a couple of shots in there where I did night photography at winter at frozen waterfalls. I have the the cleats that go on your boots. Mine are Catulas, I think is what they're called.
Mhm.
And so, boy, you can walk around on ice just like it was not ice. So
Thanks.
Any other questions from anyone? Well, yeah, and we're coming right up to noon, so that's good timing, Kevin. Well, Kevin, thank you. It was a very fascinating, interesting presentation.
quite
I think
welcome.
a
And
lot,
thank you so much.
got a lot of great comments in the chat, you know, saying how great the presentation was, and I'll definitely agree. It was definitely one of our top presentations.
Wow. Oh, cool. Thank you.
I would
Also-
second that, Jeff. Probably one of the best ones we've seen yet. Yep.
Yeah, yeah. And I think one where we've had the most people are pretty close. We had quite a high number in the middle there. So,
Yeah.
So Kevin, thank you for coming. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Everybody, I put out his website. You saw his website on his last screenshot. So,
I've already referred you to another camera club to contact you, so you might
Thank
see.
you.
Yeah, we'll let everybody know about you. Like I said, I've been following you on online for quite a while, and was really happy when I could get you to come on and do this. So I thank you for that. And I guess we will call it a day, because I don't think we have anything else other than I will say next for March, we got Marty is going to talk about drone photography. In April, we have Chris Scott on One Basics, talking about On-One Photo Raw. Chris does a really nice job of explaining how that program works. So it's another option instead of Lightroom. In May, we have Nicole Brennan talking about the basics of night photography. And then June, I have Jim Karofsky, one of our president of WACO, going to be talking about the way he lights his photographs, his outdoor photographs, the way he gets them lit up and corrected. And some of that, we'll have a better explanation as I get it from him. So I've got stuff up till June. I am working on July through the end of the year. So if anybody does know of somebody good, please send the name towards me and I will see if I can get them signed up. And with that, Kevin, thank you.
If I could just make one more comment. While you're talking there, I was going down through the chat, and I just want to say thank you again for all those nice comments. I really appreciate that. This has been fun, and I hope I come back at some other time and give another program. So. Yeah,
I'd love to have you back one of these days. So
I think, Jeff, maybe we'll look at it for the chapter, possibly for a program.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Kevin, like I said in the beginning, we've got 19 camera clubs in our group, and this will get out to all of them. So you may be hearing from a number of clubs from Wisconsin. So, and that's why we do this. This is also a great way to, spread the word and get your info out to a lot of different people. So
I really appreciate that.
No problem. So with that, I will say thank you, and everybody have a good week. We'll see you next month.
Thank you, Kevin.
Anything special for me, Jeff? Otherwise, I'm going to get on with my day. But
yeah, no, I don't have. I want to try to get YouTube shut down.